And one sec. And just waiting for Instagram now because it's slow. Got it. All right. We are live. Welcome, everyone. This is What the Frac, where we go over marketing tips, trends, and topics in 20 to 30 minutes or less, or so we try. We tend to talk a lot, but every week we do 3 different types of conversations about marketing. We have our case studies where we break down popular topics, tell you what was successful, what flopped, and how you can add that to your marketing plan. We have our troubleshooting, which we take specific challenges that business owners and marketers have, and we break down how you get past those challenges. And then we have our lives, one of our favorite parts every week, where we bring on other marketers, business owners who are doing it in real life, who can give us tips, who are experts in their space. And today I am so excited for this one because, Katy, I have known you a short amount of time in relative speaking, but I have learned so much, and I feel like you are so badass, and I think everyone needs to know who you are. So can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Thank you. You might have introduced me better than I could introduce myself, but Nicole, like Nicole said, my name is Katy, and I own a marketing and advertising firm, originally out of Louisville, Kentucky. We are now based out of Savannah, Georgia. On a personal note, but I'm sure we'll dive very deep into the marketing side, but I'm a wife, recently married in last September. I'm a dog mom to a very old pup, and I'm a diehard Kentucky basketball fan. So that's the short version of Katy.
I love it. Tamara, Katy and I became really fast friends because I'm convinced she's the Southern version of me.
You know what? I'm going to see if that's true. Let's see what she thinks about funnels. I won't believe it until I see it. So we'll get there. We will get there. I think that you buried the lead though. And what I'm really excited to chat about is how you had a very dramatic turn in how you got to marketing, right?
Yes. I have a very crooked path here. So I actually have my first degree is medical. So I went to college, played soccer in college, got a degree in occupational therapy. Got out, was practicing, wanted a little bit more of a challenge, got into sales, medical sales, and then I was developing, various markets in order to sell whatever I was selling, and learned a lot. And then finally, years later, realized that I wanted to do this for myself and see if I could help more businesses than just the business that I was working with. So very crooked path.
So I really want to know, I'm curious because I know occupational therapy has a lot to do with rehabilitation, right? But there has to be a behavioral element that you start learning about how people behave and think and go on that process. So when we dive into this, I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions about behavior.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, in case you didn't get that, what we're going to be talking about today is pivoting. And for me, my thing about pivoting, I could talk about this all day long, because I think that in our community, whether that's entrepreneurship, marketing, people are constantly and clients are constantly looking to grow, even when they're in stages of development or maintenance. They're constantly pushing at growing and seeing numbers and seeing data that's growing. And they're not taking the moment to sit back and say, like, should we pivot? Are we in the right direction? And I think that pivoting is not a failure. That's my unpopular opinion. But I want to hear a little bit about how you think about pivoting, because you've pivoted a few times in your life.
I think the beauty's in the pivot, but I think it has to be the right time. And I think understanding when the pivot needs to occur is the magic. But in my opinion, I will take somebody that has leaned into the right pivot time and time again over somebody that has been afraid to pivot. Lack of flexibility is going to cause failure, in my opinion.
Nicole,
so how curious. Do you?
Do you think pivoting is unpopular because it got so like people were using it way too much, especially in technology, right? Like pivoting was the cool thing to do, or what everybody was talking about. Is that why you think it's unpopular to pivot?
No, I think that from my perspective or at least from my history and my experience, twofold. One, I think in the tech world and in the startup world, we've gone to a move where we're taking on a lot of investor dollars. We're taking on a lot of pressure to deliver a product really fast and to get to unicorn status really fast. And so I think that, we do all these case studies about Slack and PayPal and how big they got and how quick they got. And what people aren't realizing is that, yes, everyone does those case studies, but for every one of those case studies, there are thousands of companies who got there at a slower, burn point. And it's kind of like a relationship. I was just having this conversation last night, and you guys, you're both married. I'm not. But I personally think in a relationship, when we're younger, we want it to like burn fast. We want that passion. We want a quick, love story. But the slow burn where you become friends and you like grow together is actually the relationship most times you end up in. And it's the same thing with business. So I think in our communities, everyone wants that $1 billion buyout fast. And then I think as women too, we don't talk a lot about this on our podcast, and I think it's a shame. As women in marketing, as women in business, we are expected to do more and quicker. And like I just feel like when you say, "Oh, I decided to exit that business," or "I decided to close down that business," or "we decided to change the direction," like we have this like attachment to, we said we're going to do it, so we're going to do it. And we don't generally we feel like it's a failure if we're moving in a different direction.
Yeah.
The good pivot.
Yeah. And I think to layer onto that, Nicole, like I think about it all the time. I'm like, people are forced at 17 or 18 years old, right, to decide what they want to be for the entirety of the rest of their life. And we make those decisions. And so oftentimes you look to your left and you look to your right and you find somebody that's so miserable because they have stuck with the decision that they made at 17 or 18. So it kind of relating it back to business can be the same way. Sometimes people get this thought in their head and they're like, this is the way my marketing strategy should go. This is what's going to be best for me. And they go all in on it. They invest, they go through school, and then they realize, oh, this is maybe not what's best for me. But instead of in that like sliver of a moment being able to pivot, they let their like ego or this shell come over where they go, no, we're just going to force it to work. And then they just keep going. And guess what? It most of the time never works when it's forced.
Yeah. So. Which I think is just the epitome of like the opposite end of what marketing is, right? And one of the things that I keep saying recently is that marketing, what most people don't understand is that marketing is a series of making assumptions, validating those assumptions, and deciding whether to keep moving forward or to change, right? And the only difference between marketers, whether you're paid a lot of money, you're not paid a lot, is whether they can take their experience and get you to the assumption that you need to be faster, right? Like they're not the ones who know everything. Like I hate when a client comes and they just expect me to know what to tell them. No, I need the data. I need the assumptions. I need to make those changes, right? So I guess my big thing that I want to know, because you seem to be the master of pivots and finding that magical spot, is what processes have you put in place in your life or in your business to identify when you need to pivot, and then how do you actually like move forward with that pivot?
Ooh, that's a great question. It's loaded too. I think to your first point, the data says a lot, right? And I think, oftentimes too, when we're talking to someone that's not as experienced with marketing, i.e. a client that says, okay, I know I need it, but I don't know a lot about it. We always have the joke, like, how much of this do you think is pretty pictures and how much of this do you think is actual data? And the conversation always leans towards like, oh, they think we're going to make a couple cute things and then their business is going to, do very well. And it's quite the opposite, as you know. But I think, being able to look at the data also connect the dots between what we're seeing on the back end and what our clients and the sales team is feeling on the front end, and making sure that those things connect. As far as knowing when the right time to make that pivot is, oh gosh, I think for me, a lot of times I hate to say like it's a feeling, because that's not a good answer, but it's kind of like an intuition where you just know, like, okay, this is ran its course. This is not where we need to be. And instead of continuing to pour, time, money, whatever resource into it, we need to take a look at a different angle. And we may pull out and test slightly over here before we, pick the world up and dump it on its head. But I think being able to like be in tune with all the pieces as they work together, and understanding that moment where it's not fitting, that's the important part of the pivot to me.
Do you set up timelines for when you say, all right, we're going to analyze and potentially pivot at, these timelines? So we're going to set this up. We're going to give it a month. Then we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Like, how do you go about that when you're in the strategy phase? Because I find more and more that I am definitely putting in more of a structured timeline so that people don't run too soon, right? They give things time to breathe, especially with all the changes that are happening. But then with an expectation that, okay, at this point, we could be changing our whole strategy. So let's not get too set in stone on what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think that comes in the answer to that is every channel's different. Everybody's different, which is, but when you know the benchmarks and you've done the research in your industry too, and you know the information on your consumer, which that's a whole nother topic, but it's something that so many people skip completely. And they just think, oh, here's this tactic and this strategy, go implement and execute. And they miss building the foundation, which gives them a very weak home. But when you have the foundational information and you know what you're benchmarking against, I think the more that you do things, the earlier you will start to see patterns of failure. And the quicker that you're able to say, okay, yes, in theory, let's give this campaign 90 days to produce some results for you to see, some leads coming in and those to generate into sales and whatnot if we're in, a service-based business or something along those lines. However, there are markers way before we get to 90 days if our campaigns are underperforming or if they're pacing to perform. And so we actually have different benchmarks that we'll look at on a weekly basis. We have certain benchmarks we look at monthly, small things we look at daily even. And then we're assessing it. If we're 15 days in and we're under pacing and we're behind, we're not too worried. If we're 45 days in and we're still feeling that, we're not going to give it 90 days for it to take all of our money, right? And I think part of that too is being able to test multiple things inside that channel, that you're showing up on as well. So like maybe you ABC the creative or the copy or whatnot.
Yeah, I think that what you said about intuition is super important. But then, one of the things I tell my mentees all the time is the number one thing you're going to do in business is develop, listening to yourself and develop your intuition. Because, there's so many stories about founders who everyone told was crazy, but they knew that this was the product that was needed, right? Or, and granted, there's data behind that. So I think that, yes, intuition's important, but then I also get asked, what are the rules? And I think that rules is a really bad word to use in marketing and in business, because there really are rules are hard and fast, right? Yeah. And personally, I'm not a rule follower. You tell me to don't touch the trees, I'm going to touch the trees, right? It's just the way I have a really funny story about that. But yeah, I mean, that's just who I am, right? And so it's really like guardrails. from, knowing who you are, knowing, for me, I know I like to analyze data, so I'm not going to let it go too far, but I also have a lot of ideas really fast. And so I'm a shiny object type person. So those guide rails allow me to say, okay, well, we're not at 90 days, so I can't change unless here's my exit ramp. Here's my exit ramp. Here's my exit ramp. So it sounds tedious, but it's also the way that you like build, put yourself in a space that's stable, because with marketing, you can't get off too early. You can't let it go too long, right? So there's just these spaces and these guardrails that you have to build for yourself.
And sometimes the pivot isn't so black and white. Sometimes it comes in at a time when it's more so circumstantial, and you just like see an opportunity and you lean into the opportunity. So because marketing is based on the data aspect of it, but it's also kind of based on like the economics, right? So when you're reading the data so that you can understand, like, historically speaking, this is what's going to happen, but you're also having to read the now of the population and the world and society, and trying to layer that in and kind of predict the future too. Like, how do these two things come together? And that's really what our job is, right? That's the silver bullet that everybody wants. Well, like, how do we make it work right now for us? And I think sometimes that's when the pivot comes in, is seeing something change and you can go, oh, that's going to cause X, Y, and Z. Let's go ahead and get ahead of this. I don't know, Nicole, I think it maybe sounded like that's kind of what you were saying too.
Yeah. And I think you come to like, and Tamara, I'm definitely going to let you talk. I feel like this is something I'm like jumping in, like we're having such a good conversation, but this brings me like to one other thing I wrote down on my notes for today. Like, and you just brought, once again, you're taking the words out of my mouth. You just brought this up, which is, I was literally on Instagram this morning, and with our Instagram account, because we talk to so many marketers, I'm literally seeing all these trends and topics and reels and stuff. And it's everyone wants that silver bullet. They want the list. Like, they want us to, after this live, to give them a list of all the things of the times when they should pivot and the rules they should have. And you literally see like one reel that says, you should be deleting these posts 24 hours after you post them. And then another reel that says you should never delete a post, right? And all these marketers who are sitting here talking about how like marketing is confusing. But I have the way that's going to make it not confusing for you. And I can literally start a soda company tomorrow. Look at Poppy, look at some of these other ones that just started. I could take the exact marketing plan of Coca-Cola and I could still not be successful, because in marketing, you're bringing together what's happening in society. Are the consumers ready for it? Do they want it? You need to make sure your messaging is on point and not tone deaf. You need to make sure that the data is there. You need to try to work with trends. You need to figure out, make these assumptions, and you need to do your discovery. And we just did a whole troubleshooting on discovery, so that will be coming out in a few weeks. And I think that marketers are really afraid of some of this data, or business owners don't think that they need it. And so we get 10 years down the line, we get 3 years down the line, and now we're so far off path. I personally like to at least do 2 a year where I'm like coming back to the baselines. Mm-hmm. Are we in the right spot? Mm-hmm. Are we making the right decisions? Are we going in the right direction? I don't know, Tamara, what about you? I mean, is this like in space where you're at?
Well, it just makes me think marketing is an art, it's a science, and it's a moment. Mm. So you have to bring all these things together and catch lightning in a bottle for success, right? You have the science part that you're constantly analyzing and making sure that you've got the right data and feedback, but then you have to have that creative instinct to understand what's going on in that market, what's going on in that industry, and how to engage with your customers. And then it's the moment. It is purely a moment in time that you are grabbing and saying, these two things now align in order to make success with what's happening in the world around me. So it is so complicated, and why intuition can actually play such a big part in it, even though we're saying it's so data and numbers and analytics based. And that's where I think we all kind of fall down a rabbit hole, and why sometimes things are just so hard to explain when you're working with people who aren't necessarily deeply versed in campaigns or, especially brand building campaigns, right? So that's my general thoughts on it. But I think when it comes to like, if I were to, I love actionable questions, right? So like when it comes to figuring out when to pivot and how to do, like, talk to your customers about that. Like, okay, we've realized this. Now we're going to need to go in a different direction. How do you go about doing that? And especially like with costs in mind?
How do I go about the conversations with the client? Oh, yeah. Actually, that's not really hard for me, I don't think. A lot of times when I think it goes back to upfront communication, right? Whenever you're meeting with a client, and this kind of ties into what you said too, Nicole, I think that there's so much noise today because so many people understand channels, but not enough people understand the buyer or the consumer psychology. And so all the noise that we hear is like, do this, do that, do this, do that. The real answer is like, what does the consumer that you're serving want to see from you, right? And to tie this into what you just asked, in the very first upfront conversation that I have with any of my clients is, well, where are you right now? Where do you want to be? And how fast do you want to get there? And what are those metrics? And then what we do is we sit down and we work that equation backwards. So we'll go back and we'll say, okay, based on the audience that you serve, based on the brand presence that you have currently in the market space and your competitors, Coca-Cola, right? Like, how much of a dent do we think is realistic within this amount of time, within this amount of money? And then where is our best foot forward? So we talk about this and we come up with this plan together, so to speak, and we sit down and we say, okay, here's what we think, but this could change. We may have to pivot. So when we have that conversation up front, when we identify the pivot, I don't think it's a hard conversation to come back to the client and say, hey, we're having a moment right now where we're seeing an opportunity for pivot. What do you think about it? And then we sit down and we explain it to them and we educate them and empower them in understanding what we're seeing so that it doesn't feel like hocus pocus, and it establishes trust. And worst thing that happens in the digital world is, hey, we were wrong, and we turn it back on, right? Like, it's like from that standpoint. Now the big pivots happen that are kind of scary if like we're going, hey, we need to change brand identity. Like, that's a different type of pivot than saying, hey, this OTT creative isn't really working. Let's think about moving over here. So
you're so right, especially with younger companies, because that identity could be very wrapped up in either the founder or like they've put so much time and energy into it that could be a very personal conversation.
Oh, yeah, 100%, 100%. Especially you come from the startup world, this like better than anyone. And it's typically the brand that gets us started. It gets us so far, but it won't get us to the next level, depending on what that strategy is. And that is hard because you have to figure out, okay, how do I take elements that are so tied to this person's heart and still bring them through so that they understand that there's that little wink, right? Like, oh, I see my little brand wink inside there, but we're actually now positioning this brand to be like global, or we're positioning this brand to grow to this level, and they look different. So
yeah, I found it to be, it's either really easy to do or it's really hard to approach and to do and to get that right. There's no in between. There's no like, oh yeah, there was we talked about it and we got there. Like, it's either you bring it up and like the founder CEO is like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, or you bring it up and they're like, no.
And do you find it's oftentimes the latter or the
just in my experience, I mean, I haven't had to have that conversation too often. I've had it several times, a handful of times. And I would say it's about 50-50. That's why I said like, but there's never any lukewarm, sure, let's, toy with the idea and maybe put some tests out there. It's just like, yes, you're right, I've been thinking about it too. Or Absolutely not. There's no wiggle room.
Yeah. I find that bringing data to the conversation, not to go back to the data point, but like I have two examples. One, and I think I've brought this up on a different live. I have a client, they were a dispensary, they had like multiple founders, and half of the, like when we were talking about who their clientele was, they had all of these ideas about who their clientele was, but nothing backing it up. And I was pretty sure that they, like, half of them were wrong about their clientele. So we did a survey, and it was the 420 survey that we talked about, where we had like 700 people who filled it out. And it actually, half of the founders, it validated what they thought, and half of them, it like proved them wrong. And at that point, they stepped back and was like, yes, okay, we get it. We were wrong. But I actually had a conversation with another founder recently who grew this great brand. And I think she realized that the brand she grew was not, it got her to this next level, but it wasn't really going in the direction, like she was more fulfilled going in this other direction and talking to these other people. So she wanted to try to like marry the two. And she brought in another founder who actually was not on the same page. And we had to have this really like candid conversation. It totally blindsided me. I thought I was going there to present a funnel or like a marketing plan to them, right? There you go, Tamara, there's your funnel. A marketing plan to them. And we ended up having a really candid conversation about like, okay, if you want this end, like for this to end in this space, this is the goal, you're going to have to let go of your baby in this space. And she wanted to so badly, but I think she felt like that, once again, a pivot, that was going to be a failure. Like she had to say to people, oh, sorry, I was wrong. And it's not a wrong thing. It's just you're moving and evolving as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think the research and the data that says it, and we have taken companies before, same thing, Nicole, where they've had, pre-existing thoughts about their brand or their identity, and we just take it to market and we ask, what is the awareness around this brand? What are your thoughts around this brand? Have you ever heard of this brand? We do some various things, and 9 times out of 10, what we get back, we find things that we're like, okay, yeah, we knew that, we expected that. And then we find things out that we're like, oh, there's like massive opportunity here, or we see nothing that we thought we were going to see on this, piece of paper. But that's the point, is like, you have to go to market. We can't show up. We can't market a business. Your business will fail if only thing you care about is what you put out on the streets, right? And you don't care about the person that you're serving at the back end of it. Always like use this silly little turkey sandwich story where I'm like, you could have the best turkey sandwich on the planet and you could sell it on the side of the street. And if no one in that entire community eats turkey and they only eat ham sandwiches, like you still don't have a good business, right? And it could be the best turkey sandwich on the planet, but your consumers don't eat turkey sandwiches. So
I come from software. We have a saying: if you put it out and you're happy with what you put out and it's exactly the way you want it, you've put it out too late. Like, because you need feedback. I don't know how many times, and I've done this where I've like focused on a feature. Like, this feature is going to be what makes us. And then we put all this money, effort, time. We finally put it out there and no one cares about that feature because we didn't ask our audience. And Tamara, you're big on feedback loops. So this is your realm.
Yeah. But I think, I've done it a lot with technology, but I think it should be something that is just standard for every organization, right? Just continuing that feedback of every product that you have, so that you're constantly understanding the state of where your customers are at and how your products are affecting them, affecting their life, and then how you can better them to make, to become just the number one thing, their go-to. So if you don't have feedback loops for any of your products, like, it's just such a missed opportunity. And we do, shameless plug, we do Slack. We've done a case study on Slack and how they get to market. And I really did enjoy that because it was very much about, leveraging their community to build a better product.
Yeah. And I think that pivoting when I'm gonna pivot the conversation a little bit. I think we people talk a lot about pivoting in terms of like the ideas or the marketing plan. But when we're talking about like business, pivoting could also be outgrowing a business partner or outgrowing a city or a community or realizing that you're not the right person to run that company anymore. Like I'm so impressed by founders who decide I went into this, I want to be the CMO. I don't want to be the CEO, or I don't want to run the company because that's not who I am. And I think that we have to think about that. Pivoting's not just the feature set or the brand. It is how you build your company. It's how you build your lifestyle. And like you said, Katy, like we are told to decide our lifestyle when we're 17 or 16 years old. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I'm definitely not where I thought I was going to be. I'm completely different industry. You're in a completely different, Tamara, you pivoted to a different industry. And so often I do the exercise with my clients where I'm like, okay, what's the lifestyle you want in 3 years? Not just what's the business, like what's the lifestyle you want in 3 years? Like how can we get the business to fit into your lifestyle versus a career that your lifestyle fits around, right? I don't know. That's maybe a thought.
I think it's interesting. And I think it's actually interesting kind of in the concept of our show, which is what the frac, right? For fractional executives. One thing I've been seeing a lot, which kind of touches on what you said, Nicole, is that there are so many like organizations that are looking for CEOs, which you actually go like young, more, startups or smaller businesses. And it's because either the person who started it just realizes that they should be the expert, either the subject matter expert, or the product expert, or the designer, and that they want to bring in someone else to do that. And it's growing. I'm seeing it more and more, which is a little bit non-traditional, where the person who founds the company is always the CEO, right? I'm seeing that that's not the case anymore. There's really an interesting divergence in people just saying, no, I'm the expert in this, and I want someone else to lead the growth.
Yeah. And being like the devil's advocate on this is like one of my biggest pet peeves with, and this is getting to Katy. I'm going to ask you a question that I'm asking at the end of all lives. But one of my biggest pet peeves with the marketing industry is like, because there's that need and that feel for like, we need people who have done this before, we need the answers. There's also this growth in coaches, consultants, masterminds, communities. And I'm not saying they're bad, but what I'm saying is that no one, not even I don't care how much money they've made, no one has the answers as to what is right or what your marketing plan should be in your company until they've looked at the data, they've done the research. I don't care if they were the head of Coca-Cola, once again, going back to like starting a soda pop brand, right? They don't know, because like you said, catching lightning in a bottle, that sounds really unattainable and scary to marketers. But if you get the right coach, you get the right fractional, you get the right agency, you get the right mastermind, they're going to be able to tell you, okay, well, maybe if you're going to try to catch lightning in the bottle today, we shouldn't stand inside your house. We should actually put you out in this field over here where there's a storm. You may not catch the lightning, but the storm is there, right? Like they're able to put you in the right space. So if you're looking for a fractional, you're looking for an executive, you're looking for an agency or a coach, don't go to someone who's like, here, take my exact plan because I know the answers. Go to the person who's going to put you in the field where you can potentially catch lightning in a bottle, right? And so my question to you, Katy, because you just heard my gripe, is what if someone is going out there, we have business owners, we have fractionals, we have all these people, right, who are listening. If someone's going out there and looking to hire someone in marketing, whether it's an agency or a fractional or a coach, what are the biggest red flags they should look out for in our industry?
If someone offers you an A, B, C, or D package, that is, for me, like my personal biggest pet peeve in the world. Everybody doesn't fit into 1, 2, or 3, and you shouldn't be forced into 1, 2, or 3. I think you should look for somebody that's going to do what's right for you, meet you where you're at now, set you up for success and where you want to be in the future. But And I know that that's a little bit of an unpopular opinion because most people in business say offer A, B, C, and D packages because that's how you scale and that's how you do this great thing. But I tend to disagree with that. I think relationships are how you scale your business, and being able to have somebody that when you get into business with them and they're there for the right reasons and they're not afraid to roll their sleeves up and get their hands dirty and offer what's best for your business and listen to you and what you need and find a plan that suits you, not a plan that suits them. They will become a lifelong partner with you and your business, and they will become a referral partner for you, and it will work out for everyone. So I have a rant on that world. I'm like, even sometimes internally people will say like, okay, but what, I need the easy button. And I'm like, the easy button is to do what's right? Like offer what's right for the client, and we will figure it out on our end. So I think if you're ever sitting down with someone and they just say, okay, you have to be one of these 3 things, and there's no room for movement, I would consider just, I don't know, get 3 quotes and see what you like best. So
I love that. All right. Well, this was our live today. We went a little over, but that's awesome because the conversation was really great. Katy, if people want to work with you, they now know who you are, they want to reach out, how can they find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn as Katy Thomas Young, or you guys can visit our website at bloomconsultingfirm.com. And anybody is also free to shoot me an email at Katy, Katy, at bloomconsultingfirm.com.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Well, that is What the Frac. Join us on YouTube. Subscribe. Join our email list. We have lots of great things going out. We have brand new episodes every week. We are on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Come join us. Join our community. And we'll be here helping you market your company.
Yeah, and put me any troubleshooting or case studies that you're interested in us looking at in the comments, or send us a direct message. We would love to check them out. We have one coming up that I'm excited about, which is the apple squish, which I'm very excited to dive into. So see everyone next week.
All right. Happy marketing, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.